there is a strange blind spot in sort of Western economic history that apparently anthropologists have been going nuts over for 100 years or more. And this is the myth of barter. Barter is often cited as the thing that precedes coinage, right? Before we had coins, imagine a world without coins, they always say. And Trent has heaps and heaps of, Nike dry fit gear. And Benji, has heaps of, illegal tobacco. How do they figure out, one wants the other thing and one wants the other thing. So how do they figure this out without coins? And so they say, well, Trent would say, I'll give you this many dry fit caps. And then Benji will say, oh, well, that equates to this much tobacco, and they'll trade like that. See? But this is ridiculous. It's stupid. It never occurred to me how stupid it was. It's not like I figured this out on my own. I read a book by David Graeber called Debt. It's a brilliant book. It's really, really interesting, and it's unbelievably easy to read, despite it being quite complicated for a guy like me. It's an excellent book, but this is absurd. This is not how it worked. The actual evidence, the archaeological and anthropological evidence, is to the contrary. It says instead people had informal debt arrangements. Trent would go up to Benji and say, hey, brah, looking for some illegal smokes. And Benji would go, yeah, brah, I know you. Because everyone's in small communities, right? Way back when. Oh, yeah, Trent, that's all right. I'll give you some. Just pay me back sometime. And then if Trent, comes into something that Benji wants, then they trade, right? Well, then he repays the debt. That's what it's not a trade. It's an informal debt arrangement. This is how the world ran for most of human history until coins come around. Coins and coins come about for soldiers. They come about for soldiers who are roaming the territories, going here and then going there, waging war amongst people or whatever. And how do you fit out all the soldiers with new spears and new, gear, gear breaks? They're 1,000 miles from home. How do you get the new gear? How do you get food when you're on the go? You can have a whole second army full of blacksmiths and, leather workers and, cooks and agricultural things. But the amount of people required for that is huge. And so what does the nation state do? The nation state issues coins to the soldiers and then tells all the peasants, you can only pay your taxes in these coins. So that way, these soldiers have a thing that the peasants want, so they can trade the coins for, armor and food and all this stuff. And the peasants have something that the soldiers want, but they also need the coins to pay their taxes, right? So this is how coinage generally comes about in the ancient worlds. It's a way of the whole populace being co-opted into the nation state, into helping the army, not helping, but assisting or whatever, the army in their pursuits. They get the coins for it, and then they pay those coins as taxes. Boom. And so coins begin, and why does this happen? Why don't they just do informal debt arrangements? Well, who would do an informal debt arrangement with a soldier that they don't even know? No one. That's crazy. No one would do that. And no one did do that. And so coins were developed to skirt around this issue. The other people who loved coins were criminals. Criminals love coins because they have no social credit. They have no trust. No one is going to, no one's going to enter into an informal debt agreement with a person who steals for a living or a person who is, of poor character or something. And so coinage is for soldiers and criminals. Now, the informal debt arrangements are gone. It's a very small community, or within families, perhaps we have this where we go, hey, dude, I just need some rah, 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 like, can I, shout me this meal, I'll shout you the next one kind of thing. We have these a little bit, but generally speaking, you don't go to your butcher and say, I'm good for it. I'm good for it, right? And he goes, yeah, I'll need a pair of shoes sometime. And then you walk away. Generally speaking, all of the commercial activity that we do is money, is done with money, virtual or physical coinage, And so we need it. We need money, and money, not just because of this sort of historical arrangements of how it came about, but also because of the current culture of money is steeped in moral confusion. Most young people that I know have a very strange relationship to money. They do not want to make a lot of it because they feel like there's a moral ill being committed. Like, necessarily to make money, you have to be doing something bad. Even if you're just a guitar teacher, the fact that you have a lot of money and you're not giving it away means you're doing something bad. And the system around money, the capitalist sort of system around money, also has a whole bunch of moral, sort of ambiguities that's around it that most normal people are in touch with. Generations prior, not so much. For them, generating wealth was sort of a naturally good thing. For even just the generation above mine, a lot of those people are kind of down on the thing. But I think for the young people, we feel trapped by the fact that we need money to survive. We need to pay taxes. We need to become what are often called wage slaves, which is that if we don't work for a wage, we will starve and die, or we'll become homeless and die. Things will be very, very bad for us. And we have no option but to earn money and spend money in order to survive in the world. This is a problem. We need a thing, and yet we feel trapped by the thing, and there's not a healthy culture around money. On one hand, you have the super consumerist types who, acquiring money is fine because if I don't, pour gasoline over the Amazon, somebody else will, or like, I earned my Mercedes. I earned every penny of that Mercedes. It's mine. Don't touch my stuff. If you touch it, I'm allowed to shoot you. There's like this like super separate self. Everyone's out for themselves. I'm out for me. I'm allowed to be. That's the moral way of the world. It's survival. There's this sort of mentality. There's also like the flexing weird mentality of hyper-consumption. These are gross cultures. These are shallow, status-anxious cultures, or subcultures, I suppose, the world of money is sort of steeped in, and hence a lot of our repulsion from the money thing, right? But I think there's a parallel. This is all to say that there's a parallel here that comes from Robert Pirsig. Robert Pirsig is an American philosopher and author. He wrote Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, which is very famous. He also wrote a sequel to that, which is even better and more ambitious and really, really illuminating and creative, and it's called Lila, An Inquiry into Morals. And I recommend them both. They're really, really interesting books. And he, in the first book, breaks down the sort of conventional metaphysics of everything in the world is attributable to a subject or an object. The subject-object metaphysics says grass, object, imagination, subject. It says money, subject. It's an idea. It's just in our heads. Money is an idea, a debt arrangement. Physical banknotes, objective. And it divides everything into these two categories, the subjective and the objective. The natural sciences, objective, and the humanities, the spirit sciences, as they're called in German, the subjective. And so he breaks that down in his first book, and in his second book, he builds something else up in its place. And I've referenced this in previous videos, but the basic idea, and there's so much to it, obviously, he wrote a whole book on it, But the basic idea is that there's new stuff, dynamic, that which is not yet existed, but it's the creative potential force in the world. And then there's all the static stuff. There's all the static stuff that is and perpetuates itself over time, the patterns, the patterned stuff. The patterns are broken down into four categories. The inorganic value patterns, which is like all matter, all physical stuff that does not contain DNA. All physical stuff that doesn't contain DNA. There's the organic value patterns, which is all physical stuff which does contain DNA. The social patterns, which is the cooperation exhibited between animals, depending on how you define it. Could be just higher primates, it could be just humans. Maybe ant colonies fit into this, or pack mentality sort of hierarchies fit into this. And then there's the intellectual patterns, which is the manipulation of symbols, independent of what those symbols represent. So creative manipulation of symbols. And so these are the 4 categories. And in this sense, we can use these 4 categories to illuminate our cultural sort of biases around money, and how we might be able to create a new sort of subculture of one, a new creative way for us to engage with money that doesn't feel so toxic, and can hopefully be much more like exciting and creative. And so on these levels, they're all sort of dependent on one another, and yet they all sort of transcend one another. So the social patterns, for example, the cooperation that we all exhibit, manifests itself in a suppression of our biological urges. While still being permissible, they're suppressed to some extent. So our biological urges say that we should eat all the calories that we can find, so we can hoard energy in our body fat, and then we'll survive longer. Or it says that we should procreate as much as we can to have as many viable offspring. But the social pattern comes in and says, hey guys, we need to get on here. We need to cooperate. So there are rules for who can eat how much and why. And there's also rules for who can procreate and when. So we come up with these social arrangements called, marriage, called, incest is bad, or whatever. We come up with these arrangements where we say, we can do these things, but we can't do these things. Third cousin, that's cool. Second cousin, not so cool. That kind of stuff. And so if the social pattern repressed the biological pattern too much, then obviously no one would survive and social patterns wouldn't exist anyway. So it has to permit a little bit of procreation, a little bit of food, and a little bit of, saucy biological stuff, whilst not, letting it get out of control. Food is on the organic, the biological sort of level. Money is on the social level. Money is a way that we cooperate. It's a system of cooperation with one another. Food is necessary for survival. Money is necessary for survival. In this current arrangement, more or less, I suppose someone in the comments could say, what about these communal communities or whatever? And you're so right. There are exceptions, but generally speaking, every person watching this will need money to survive. These are both necessary things, and we need to keep them in check, because if you go too far down the money path, it's insanity. It's absolutely crazy. Need I elaborate on that? Earning too much money makes you a crazy person, and eating too much food makes you a crazy person. It's an addictive behavior. You can become addicted to both of these things, so both of them need to be tempered. With food, we have a really, really rich history of culture behind food that says you can eat these things, but not too much of those things. It says that we should eat dessert after dinner, which is really good for our glucose curve. It flattens our glucose curve, so that's a really healthy thing to do, and our cultures say that to us. They say, we should have a salad as an entree. That's also really healthy for our glucose spikes. It says, that these foods should go together, cereal and milk. And cereal and milk both lack certain amino acids, but different ones. So when they're eaten together, they cancel out and you get a lot more protein absorption. So there's all these things in culture that say how we should eat and how much food is too much. What's an impolite thing to do at the table? Eating too fast is impolite. Why? Because it's also unhealthy. And because our culture has evolved to say what good and bad behavior is. And it's also evolved to help us enjoy food. Food is not just a thing that we have to do to survive. Hopefully it's a delicious thing, and it's a creative thing, that we get into the kitchen and we really enjoy food, and we really enjoy sort of the manipulation of ingredients and knowing where things come from and how to do justice to the ingredients. This is all really beautiful stuff, and I think a lot of people in the world who cook actively and who care about food and the alchemy of cooking can become, it can be one of life's greatest joys. And so money is similarly necessary for our survival. We have to do it. We have to have it. We have to cultivate our finances in our lives. And so I suppose I want to draw the parallel between, food and money here. We need to make finances like food. We need to make them fun, a practicable activity, so a thing that we can actually get better at by doing it, and engage in that doing it with a little bit of extra knowledge, but also with the improvisation and the creative sort of freedom that cooking has. You have the recipe, but once you get to this level of cooking, you actually don't need the recipe, or you can read the recipe and then close the book and forget about it. And you go, yeah, I know the rough order of things. I'll just, vibe within the framework of the recipe. We should be able to do that with finances too, which I think is missing in finances. A lot of it is like, this is the spreadsheet, do the spreadsheet, blah, blah, blah. Here's the recipe. Here's the mathematical recipe of how to save money, or how to, buy a house, or how to save for a jet ski, or whatever it is that you guys are into. Saving for jet skis could be one of them, one of those things. And examples for this, I've heard a great one that's about spending streaks. So start of the paycheck, you divide all your money up into the things, you pay all the bills, you set rent aside, whatever money you've got left over, you divide it into the month. If you get paid every month, you divide that into the month. So you have $4.50 every day to spend. If you don't spend that $4.50, you divide the $4.50 into all the other days of the month. So all the other days, now you get $4.70 or whatever to spend that month. And this keeps going. If you keep a streak up, then the allowance that you get to spend each day goes up and up and up. So this is a really nice way of like rewarding yourself for not spending. Every day that you don't spend, you get the allowance for the next day goes up, which is a tangible reward. And then I think the guy said that he just concentrates on like getting really huge streaks up. So I suppose he like buys groceries all in one go, so he has his groceries for the month, or he has his grocery allowance, but like coffee's out, or, all this other spending. He just like, he's created this game for himself where he's looking at a book and he's going, I could buy it, but if I do, I'll have to reset my streak. No, I won't do it. And so he doesn't do it because he likes the game of this streak. And then at the end of the month, he probably, because he's spent half the month gamifying his spending, he probably has a bunch of money to save, puts it in his savings, happy days, he goes on holiday or does whatever he likes to do. I also like the cash in a bag system. These are all just examples of like ways that we can creatively grasp our finances, grasp our relationship to money, and they're just examples so that you can play off these and do whatever, but ways that we can break free from this like saving money is bad and toxic, thinking about money is bad and toxic. It's like, no, we can play with this and find a thing that works for us, that is fun, that is a little bit exciting, that gets us where we want to go, and also doesn't make us into like some weird money hoarder who listens to money podcasts all the time and like goes on like how to save money Instagram pages or something. Like, you don't want to be a Sigma grindset guy, I assume. And this is a way of creating your own culture instead of outsourcing that to the wider culture and seeing what floats in the marketplace, because that's what most cultures are available to us, most subcultures, that which floats in the marketplace. Instead of looking for those which will necessarily be steeped in this sort of ickiness of consumer capitalism, instead we can just create our own thing. So money in the bags, that's a great one. If you go out to the pub, every beer that you don't buy, you put $7 in a physical bag because you didn't buy the beer. You every time you don't spend, you put $7 in a bag. Every time you don't buy a meal out, every time you're like, I really want to get a pizza tonight, be like, okay, wait, I'll put $25 in the bag right now, and then I'll just make myself a toasted sandwich. Boom. I just made $25. Boom. That's sick. and a really like fun way to save. Because at the end of the month, you have all this money that essentially comes from nowhere. Like it's invented money. It's pretty sick. Yeah, and finally bargaining. What's it called? Haggling. Haggling is really good fun. You can't do it with all products, but you can do it with some. And to haggle the different, like to haggle and then whatever the difference is that you saved, to put that away also goes pretty hard. I bet there are a million different like weird saving money hacks and weird planning for the future hacks, ways that we can do this without feeling weird. You could do all of these saving things and be like, and I'm going to donate half of it. So yeah, I'm saving money. I'm saving way more money than before when I wasn't caring about my finances. But also on top of that, I'm not just saving this for my, whatever, my car or my holiday or whatever. I can actually do this for others. I can care about money for others. Or I can, instead of donating it to charity, you can form a little fund, So at the end of the month, you're like, oh, I saved $300 this month. So I can actually set aside 150 of that and I'll just buy stuff for other people. That'll be my spending money for friends and family fund. And then you've got this little thing where you get to be generous all the time. It might be really worth saving for you if it means that you can buy your little cousin an ice cream every time you take him to soccer practice. You can, get him a thing that he likes, or you can, buy a book for someone who's interested in reading, but, they're only 15, so they don't have much money. So you can just buy books for people that you love, or, whatever your thing is that you want to do for other people. You can translate your saving in a portion of it into that, and therefore you're not saving just for yourself, you're saving for other people too. It's a much more humane way of running things, perhaps for you. That'll work. All right, I hope that wasn't too long. This has been Kind Regards. Get creative. Get pumped on things that we can't escape. If you cannot escape the thing, if you cannot reject the thing, come up with a way of engaging with the thing that is good for you. We gotta eat. Do you want to be eating microwave meals, or do you want to be making food cheaper, better, tastier, healthier for yourself at home? We all want to be doing that, right? We all want to be doing that. And I assume, and so engaging with cooking, great thing. Same thing. We all want to not needlessly spend money and have no idea where our finances are at and feel really financially insecure. We don't want that. We want to engage with our finances, feel more safe in our finances. And so get creative and figure out a way to do that suits you. You don't have to listen to the people. You can come up with weird ways of doing it because we're all creative people. David Graeber, who wrote the book Debt, which I referred to at the beginning, has a beautiful quote, which I love, and it applies to this right here. This hidden truth of the world is that it is something that we make and could just as easily make differently. And the hidden truth of all our lives is that they are something that we make and could just as easily make differently. And I hope that this video can inspire you a little bit to think differently and to make your life differently in terms of money, taking the food parallel as perhaps a little guide there. Cook your money like food or something like that. Anyways, this has been Kind Regards. Thanks very much for watching and have a great day. There's a Substack link below, and there's also YouTube and Spotify. So whichever one's more convenient, click the link below and it'll take you there. Have a great day.